If you're brave enough to dive into the darkest corners of America's prison system, hit that subscribe button now, because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about justice. Like this video if you dare, and drop a comment telling me if you'd survive what's coming. Now, let's descend into the shadows. Deep in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia, where the fog rolls thick enough to choke on and the nearest town is 40 miles of winding road away, sits Red Onion State Prison. They call it the end of the line. The place where Virginia sends the inmates they want the world to forget. Supermax security. 23 hours a day in an 8x10 concrete cell. No windows. No mercy. No hope. But this story isn't about the criminals locked inside those walls. It's about the ones who vanished from them. October 15, 2022. Detective Sarah Chen's phone rang at 3:17 in the morning. She'd been with Virginia State Police for 12 years, worked every kind of case you could imagine, but the voice on the other end made her blood run cold. "We have a situation at Red Onion," the warden said, his words clipped and careful. "One of our inmates is missing." Sarah sat up in bed, fully awake now. Missing. From a Supermax prison. "That's impossible, right?" The warden's laugh was hollow. "That's what I thought too. But Marcus Webb, inmate number 478932, is gone. Cells empty. Beds made. It's like he evaporated." By sunrise, Sarah was standing in the prison's central control room, surrounded by banks of monitors showing every corridor, every cell block, every square inch of the facility. The place was designed to prevent exactly this, a fortress of steel and concrete carved into the mountain itself. Marcus Webb had been serving 3 consecutive life sentences for a string of armored car robberies that left 2 guards dead. 42 years old, model prisoner for the past 8 years, no disciplinary issues, no escape attempts. Nothing in his file suggested he was planning anything. "Show me the footage," Sarah demanded. The security chief, a thick-necked man named Rollins, pulled up the recordings. They watched Webb in his cell at 10 p.m. during final count. Lights out at 10:30. The camera showed his form under the blanket, unmoving, throughout the night. Then at 2:45 a.m., during the routine security sweep, the guard opened the food slot to check on him. The cell was empty. "Rewind it," Sarah said. "Show me every second from 10:30 to 2:45. They watched. And watched. The lump under the blanket never moved. No one entered the cell. No one left. The door never opened. The camera never glitched or cut out. Marcus Webb had been there. Then he wasn't. "This is impossible," Rollins muttered. But Sarah had learned in her years as a detective that impossible just meant you hadn't found the answer yet. "I want to see his cell. Now." The walk through Red Onion felt like descending into hell itself. Every door required 3 separate keys. Every corridor was monitored by armed guards in bulletproof towers. The air smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. Marcus Webb's cell was in Alpha Block, the most secure section of the prison. When the heavy steel door rolled open, Sarah stepped inside and felt the walls close in around her. 8 feet by 10 feet. A metal toilet. A concrete slab for a bed. No windows. Just a thin ventilation grate near the ceiling. She examined every inch. The walls were solid concrete. The floor was seamless. The ventilation grate was screwed in tight, each screw showing no signs of tampering. Then she saw it. On the wall above the bed, scratched so faintly she almost missed it, were 3 words, "They're taking US." "Chief Rollins," Sarah called out, her voice steady despite the chill running down her spine. "How many inmates have been transferred out of Red Onion in the past 6 months?" Rollins checked his tablet. 17. Mostly medical transfers or court appearances. "I need their names. All of them." 20 minutes later, Sarah sat in the warden's office, staring at a list that made her stomach turn. 17 names. 17 transfers. She started making calls. The first 3 had been transferred to medical facilities. She called each one. None of them had any record of receiving an inmate from Red Onion. The 4th name, James Patterson, had allegedly been transferred to federal court for a hearing. The court clerk had no record of any such hearing. By the time she reached the 10th name, Sarah's hands were shaking. None of them existed. Not at the facilities they'd supposedly been sent to. Not in any federal database. Not anywhere. 17 inmates had left Red Onion State Prison in the past 6 months. 17 men had vanished into thin air. And now Marcus Webb made 18. Sarah looked up at the warden, whose face had gone pale. "We don't have an escape," she said quietly. "We have something much worse." But when they pulled the complete security footage from the past 6 months and started reviewing every single transfer, what they discovered in those recordings would shatter everything they thought they knew about Red Onion State Prison. Sarah Chen spent the next 72 hours living in that prison, barely sleeping, surviving on black coffee and the gnawing certainty that she was running out of time. The security footage told a story that shouldn't have been possible, yet there it was, frame by frame, in digital clarity. Every single transfer followed the same pattern. An inmate would be called for movement at 0300 hours, the dead of night when most of the prison slept. 2 guards she didn't recognize would arrive, always wearing their uniforms just right, badges gleaming, but their faces somehow blurred on every camera angle. Not technically malfunctioning, just perpetually out of focus, as if the universe itself was helping them hide. The inmates would be shackled, walked through the corridors, and loaded into a white transport van in the secure garage. Then the van would drive out through the main gate, past all the checkpoints, with every guard waving them through without question. That van never appeared on a single traffic camera on the mountain road leading away from Red Onion. It simply vanished into the Virginia night. How is this possible? Warden Hutchins asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He'd aged 10 years in 3 days. Every guard here has been vetted, background checked, polygraphed. Sarah pulled up the personnel files, cross-referencing the guards on duty during each mysterious transfer. Look at this. Different guards every time. Different shifts. No pattern in their assignments. She paused, her finger hovering over the screen. Except one name that appears in the logs every single night. Always working the central control room during these transfers. Hutchins leaned in. Officer Dale Briggs. He's been here 14 years. One of our most reliable people. Where is he right now? His shift started at 6. He should be in central control. They found central control empty. Briggs' jacket hung on his chair, his coffee still warm. The monitors flickered with their usual feeds, showing every corner of the prison except one. Alpha Block's East Corridor camera displayed nothing but static. "That's Webb's cell block," Sarah said, already running. They raced through the corridors, their footsteps echoing off concrete walls. Sarah's hand instinctively moved to her service weapon. Something was happening right now, in real time, and every second mattered. When they reached Alpha Block, they found the guard stationed there slumped against the wall, unconscious but breathing. His keys were gone. Cell doors stood open like missing teeth in a smile, and 3 cells that should have held inmates were empty. Fresh scratches marked the floor, drag marks leading toward the service elevator at the end of the corridor. An elevator that supposedly only went down to the maintenance level. Sarah hit the call button. The elevator rose slowly, groaning like something awakening from a long sleep. When the doors opened, she found herself staring at a smear of blood on the back wall, still wet, still red. "Call for backup," she told Hutchins. "Full tactical team. And get medical up here for that guard. You're not going down there alone. Someone has to. Those inmates could still be alive." The elevator descended past the maintenance level, past the basement, past any floor that should have existed according to the prison blueprints. When it finally stopped, the doors opened onto darkness broken only by emergency lighting strips along the floor. Sarah stepped out, her weapon drawn, her heart hammering against her ribs. She was in a corridor that didn't exist on any official plan, stretching into shadow in both directions. The walls here were different, older, rough-hewn stone instead of concrete. This wasn't part of the modern prison. This was something else, something that had been here long before Red Onion was built. She heard voices ahead, low and urgent. Moving forward carefully, she rounded a corner and stopped cold. The corridor opened into a massive chamber carved from the mountain itself. Medical equipment lined the walls, surgical lights hanging from the ceiling, stainless steel tables arranged in rows. But it was what stood in the center of the room that made Sarah's blood freeze. 17 men sat strapped to chairs, their heads shaved, electrodes attached to their skulls. 17 inmates who were supposed to be transferred, who were supposed to be somewhere else, who the world thought had vanished. They weren't dead. They were worse than dead. Their eyes were open but empty, their mouths slack, drool running down their chins. Whatever had been done to them had left them as hollow shells, their minds scraped clean. Marcus Webb sat among them, freshly secured, electrodes not yet attached. He was conscious, terrified, struggling against his restraints. When he saw Sarah, his eyes went wide with desperate hope. That's when she heard the footsteps behind her. Detective Chen. The voice was calm, almost friendly. I was hoping you'd give up and leave. This would have been so much easier if you'd just filed a report and walked away. Sarah spun around, her weapon raised. Officer Dale Briggs stood there, but he wasn't alone. 6 men in surgical scrubs flanked him, and they all carried weapons that made her service pistol look like a toy. What is this? Sarah demanded, her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. What have you done to them? Briggs smiled, and it was the coldest thing Sarah had ever seen. We're solving a problem, detective. These men are murderers, rapists, the worst society has to offer. We're giving them a chance to contribute something meaningful for once in their worthless lives. By turning them into vegetables. By harvesting their neural patterns. Their memories, their experiences, their psychological profiles. All of it mapped, digitized, and sold to the highest bidder. Do you have any idea how much governments and corporations will pay for the complete psychological profile of a serial killer? For the neural pathways of someone capable of murder? Sarah's mind raced. This wasn't just about Red Onion. This was bigger, more organized, more horrifying than she could have imagined. You'll never get away with this. We already have, detective. For 6 months. And we would have continued if you hadn't been so persistent. Briggs nodded to his associates. Take her. Strap her in chair 18. The state police detective's neural profile should fetch an excellent price. They moved toward her as one. Sarah fired twice, dropping the first man, but then something hit her from behind and the world exploded into stars. She felt herself falling, felt hands grabbing her, dragging her toward one of those terrible chairs. The last thing she saw before everything went black was Marcus Webb, still conscious, still aware, tears streaming down his face as he watched them secure her beside him. And in that moment, Sarah Chen understood with absolute clarity that some prisons weren't designed to keep criminals in. They were designed to keep secrets buried forever. Sarah Chen woke to the cold kiss of metal electrodes against her skull and the acrid smell of antiseptic burning her nostrils. Her wrists were secured to the chair arms with leather straps, tight enough to bite into her skin. Across from her, Marcus Webb stared with hollow eyes, his mouth moving soundlessly, trying to warn her of something. Briggs appeared in her field of vision, holding a syringe filled with pale blue liquid. This will make the extraction process smoother, he said, almost gently. You won't feel the actual procedure. You'll just drift away, and when you wake up, well, you won't really wake up at all. But as he moved closer, alarms suddenly shrieked through the underground chamber. Red emergency lights flooded the space, and Briggs froze, his head snapping toward the corridor entrance. Sir, we have a breach, one of the surgical team shouted. Multiple agencies. FBI, state police, they're in the prison. Sarah's heart surged with hope. The backup call Hutchins made must have triggered something bigger than they'd anticipated. But Briggs remained eerily calm. Activate the purge protocol, he said coldly. Destroy everything. All records, all equipment, all evidence. What about the subjects? Briggs looked at the 17 hollowed-out men strapped to their chairs, then at Sarah and Marcus. For a moment, something almost human flickered across his face. Then it was gone. Eliminate them. All of them. Make it look like they died during a failed escape attempt. The surgical team moved with practiced efficiency, pulling weapons, preparing to execute everyone in that chamber. Sarah struggled against her restraints, her mind racing for any possible way out. She'd survived 12 years as a detective, navigated the worst humanity had to offer, and she refused to die strapped to a chair in a secret torture chamber. That's when Marcus Webb did something extraordinary. Despite the electrodes attached to his head, despite the sedatives in his system, he threw his entire body weight to one side. The chair toppled over, and the electrodes ripped free with sparks and the smell of burning flesh. Marcus screamed, but he kept moving, rolling across the floor toward one of the surgical trays. The distraction lasted only seconds, but seconds were enough. Gunfire erupted from the corridor entrance. FBI agents in tactical gear poured into the chamber, their weapons trained on Briggs and his team. The underground facility transformed into a war zone, bullets ricocheting off medical equipment, surgical lights exploding in showers of glass. In the chaos, Briggs ran. Not toward the elevator, but deeper into the mountain, through a passage Sarah hadn't noticed before. She watched him disappear into the darkness, and something in his escape felt wrong, calculated, like this was always part of his plan. Special Agent Marcus Rivera, FBI, reached Sarah first, cutting through her restraints with swift, sure movements. "Detective Chen. Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," she gasped, rubbing feeling back into her wrists. "But we need to stop Briggs. He's getting away. Let him go. We've got enough here to put away everyone involved." But Sarah was already moving, grabbing a dropped weapon, running after Briggs into that hidden passage. She'd come too far, seen too much, to let him slip away into whatever escape route he'd prepared. The passage twisted through the mountain, lit by ancient electric bulbs that flickered like dying stars. Sarah's footsteps echoed behind Briggs' retreating form. He was fast, but she was faster, driven by rage and justice and the faces of 17 men whose minds had been stolen. The passage opened into a natural cavern, vast and cold, with an underground stream cutting through the center. On the far side, a metal ladder led up to what must have been an exit, a way out that bypassed the entire prison. Briggs reached the ladder and started climbing. Sarah raised her weapon. "Stop. FBI and state police are already outside. There's nowhere to run." Briggs paused, looking down at her. And then he laughed. "You still don't understand, do you, detective? Red Onion was just one facility. We have 6 others across the country. Federal prisons, state prisons, even county jails. The network is massive, and it's been operating for 12 years. Sarah's blood ran cold. 12 years. Since 2010. We've processed over 400 subjects. Their neural data has been sold to intelligence agencies, tech companies, private military contractors. We've made billions. And you think catching me here tonight stops any of that?" He shook his head, still smiling. "I'm just one operator, detective. Cut off one head, 2 more grow back." "Then I'll cut off all of them," Sarah said quietly. "Starting with you." She fired once. The shot echoed through the cavern like thunder. Briggs jerked, lost his grip on the ladder, and fell backward into the rushing stream below. The current was stronger than it looked, fed by underground springs, and it pulled him under before Sarah could reach the edge. By the time she got there, he was gone, swept away into the mountain's dark heart. They never found his body. 3 months later, Sarah stood in a FBI briefing room, surrounded by evidence boards covered in photos, documents, and maps. They'd shut down Red Onion's underground operation, arrested 12 people, and rescued the 17 inmates whose minds had been harvested. Some of them would recover. Most wouldn't. Marcus Webb was learning to speak again, slowly, painfully, but he was alive and fighting. The investigation had expanded nationwide, exactly as Briggs had warned. They'd found traces of the operation in 4 other prisons so far. Hundreds of inmates were being re-examined, their transfer records scrutinized. It was the largest criminal conspiracy in U.S. prison system history. But as Sarah reviewed the files late one night, she found something that made her hands shake. A classified memo, buried deep in seized records, dated 2 weeks ago. After Briggs had died. After the operation had supposedly been shut down. The memo contained a single line, Subject 478933 transferred for neural harvest. Extraction scheduled 0300 hours. A new inmate number. A new victim. The operation was still running. Sarah looked up at the map on her wall, marked with suspected facilities. 6 locations, Briggs had said. They'd only found 5. Somewhere out there, in some forgotten prison, in some hidden chamber carved from stone and secrecy, another inmate was strapped to a chair. Another mind was being stolen. Another person was disappearing into the system, erased as completely as if they'd never existed. And Sarah Chen realized with cold, crushing certainty that this case would never truly end. Because in America's sprawling prison system, with over 2 million inmates and hundreds of facilities scattered across 50 states, how many people could vanish before anyone noticed? How many minds could be stolen before someone cared? The answer, she feared, was more than anyone wanted to know. If you made it this far, you've just scratched the surface of what's hidden in America's darkest corners. The truth is stranger and more terrifying than any fiction. Hit that subscribe button, because the next story will take you even deeper into the rabbit hole. And trust me, after what you're about to discover, you'll never look at justice the same way again.